There was a time when this bridge terrified me. I remember crossing it as a child, looking down, feeling that vibration beneath the wheels, wondering how something so large could stay standing. Funny how things change. Because now, every time I cross it, I feel exactly the opposite. A sense that I'm arriving somewhere that matters. Not because it's perfect, not because it feels familiar, but because every important version of my life seems to lead back here somehow. A relationship, a dream, a decision, a new beginning. For reasons I still don't completely understand, Lisbon has always been waiting on the other side of the bridge. One of the things I love most about traveling is the small ritual of arriving. The moment where the suitcase is finally on the floor, the room becomes yours. And for a few days, life belongs to possibility rather than routine. There is always a question hanging in the air. Who will I be by the end of this trip? You never really know. A few hours earlier, I was somewhere else entirely. Different country, different concerns, different pace. And yet, some cities have the ability to shift something inside you almost immediately. Lisbon has always been one of those places for me. Not because of what there is to do, but because of who I become when I'm here. One of the strange things about growing older is that you slowly stop talking about your dreams. And not because they disappear, but because life becomes busy enough that forgetting them feels practical. Years ago, I thought I had left writing behind. It was something I used to do, and I used to love. Something I used to want. Then Lisbon happened, and somewhere between a relationship, a move to Berlin, and a forgot pen drive, I found the manuscript again. I still remember opening that file, reading words written by a younger version of myself, seeing ambitions I had almost convinced myself no longer mattered. The book wasn't finished, but neither was I when I was a teenager. And somehow, this city became part of the reason I started believing that again. There is something beautiful about being surrounded by books. Thousands of stories. Thousands of people searching for something. Can be knowledge, escape, inspiration, a different perspective. Maybe that's what travel really is too. A search for another perspective. Not necessarily about the world, but about ourselves. As I walk higher through the park, the city slowly reveals itself. The avenue, the river in the distance, and I find myself wondering how much of what I love belongs to Lisbon, and how much belongs to the person I became here. Because when I think about this city, I don't just remember places. I remember possibilities. The possibility of starting over. The possibility of becoming somebody new. The possibility that life can still surprise you, even when you think you've already figured it out. There is a reason I keep coming back, and it isn't nostalgia. At least not entirely. What draws me here isn't the past. It's the feeling that something could still happen. Lisbon always leaves the door open. And maybe that's why it feels different. For a long time, I thought adulthood was mostly about responsibility. But one of the things Lisbon taught me is that life isn't supposed to pause in between obligations. It happens in between them. This is what I missed. I missed the feeling. The feeling that life could happen after work. That a random Tuesday afternoon could become memory. That art wasn't reserved for special occasions. That curiosity had a place in everyday life. There was a period in my life when weekends meant discovering exhibitions, wandering through neighborhoods, listening to live music in parks, finding corners of the city I didn't know existed. And what mattered wasn't what we were doing, it was the feeling that life was being lived fully, that there was always something waiting around the next corner. The funny thing is that most of the places I remember from Lisbon aren't landmarks. They're moments, conversations, ideas, feelings. The city became a container for them, and every time I return, some of those memories quietly rise back to the surface. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about identity, about how much of who we are is discovered, and how much is simply recognized much later than it should have been. The older I get, the more I realize that understanding yourself isn't a destination. It's an ongoing process. Sometimes what feels like certainty turns into a question. Sometimes a question turns into an answer. And sometimes you find yourself looking back at your own life through a completely different lens. Maybe that's another reason I keep returning here. Because Lisbon has always been a place of recognition, a place where different parts of my life seem willing to sit at the same table. The person I was, the person I became, the person I'm still trying to understand. For me, this city has always existed somewhere in the middle, between countries, between chapters, between versions of myself. Perhaps that's why the bridge feels so important. Not because it connects two sides of a river, but because it reminds me that life is full of crossings. Some are physical, others happen quietly inside us. And every now and then, if we're lucky, we arrive somewhere that helps us understand the journey a little better. Some cities become destinations. Lisbon became the bridge. There is something fascinating about cities. From a distance, everything looks complete. But once you start walking, you notice the cracks, the hidden passages, the unfinished edges. And maybe people are a little like that too. Most of us spend our lives learning how to be accepted. We learn which part of ourselves make other people comfortable, which stories are easy to tell, which emotions are safe, and eventually we become fluent in presenting a version of ourselves that fits. Not because we are dishonest, but belonging often comes with conditions. I've always found it strange how often people talk about authenticity, how we are encouraged to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be ourselves, until that honesty becomes inconvenient. Because what I've learned is that many people don't actually want the whole story. They want the edited version. The version that fits neatly into their understanding of who you are. The version that doesn't challenge them. The version that asks very little of them. And that's not love. That's convenience. There is a difference. The people who genuinely care about you don't get to choose which parts of you are acceptable. They don't get to celebrate the resilience whilst pretending the wounds never existed. It's all part of the same person. The difficult parts, the complicated parts, the uncomfortable parts. Because if somebody only accepts the pieces of you that are easy to carry, they don't really accept you. The older I get, the more I realize that loneliness isn't always about being alone. Sometimes it's about being surrounded by people who only know that edited version. The version that performs well. The version that makes everyone comfortable. And there is a particular exhaustion that comes from maintaining that separation. From constantly deciding which parts of yourself are allowed into the room. Maybe that's why I value solitude differently now. When I was younger, being alone felt like absence. Now, it feels like permission. Permission to stop explaining. Permission to stop performing. Permission to stop making myself digestible for other people. There is a reason some of my favorite travel moments happen in hotel rooms. Not because they're exciting, but because they're neutral. For a few hours, nobody expects anything. No conversations to manage. No roles to fulfill. No expectations to meet. Just silence. And sometimes silence tells the truth more clearly than anything else. Tonight, I ordered food. Put on a series from my childhood. The kind of show that instantly transports you somewhere else. Not because it's extraordinary, but because it belongs to a version of yourself that still exists somewhere beneath everything that came afterwards. And as I sit here eating, I find myself thinking about how much energy we spend trying to become acceptable. Not loved. Not understood. Acceptable. Be a little quieter. A little easier. A little less intense. A little less complicated. A little less you. And after enough years, you stop noticing how much of yourself left behind in order to fit. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that taking care of yourself will disappoint people. Not everyone, but some. Because the moment you start choosing your needs over the expectations, the relationship changes. the version of you they were used to becomes unavailable. And not everybody likes that. For most of my life, I thought self-care was a reward, something you earn after everything else was finished. Now, I think it's something much simpler. I think self-care is listening. Listening when you're tired. Listening when you're overwhelmed. Sometimes, most important thing you can do is stop. Close the door. Turn down the noise. And spend a little time in your own company. Not because you're hiding from the world, but because you're trying to return to yourself. There will always be people who prefer the version of you that asks for less. The version that never changes. The version that is easy to understand. But life isn't about becoming easier to understand. It's about becoming more honest. And sometimes, honesty begins with a very simple choice: choosing yourself.